Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon, everybody. It is a hot and sweltering Thursday afternoon. Yes, because of MCO, I tend to lose track of time and day. But it's wonderful to be here today with everybody. So welcome to our session. We have around 21 participants. So please feel free, like mentioned by Rosalind, if you would like to ask any questions, use the chat box. And time to time, I would check to see whether there are any particular questions, burning questions that you have. And for those on FB, you can put it in the message box, and the team from Magic will help ask the questions to me, and inshallah, we'll do our best to help answer those questions so that it would help you take actionable make your strategies actionable. Especially today, we're talking about how to establish and build strong organization. So I'm going to share my slide. As usual, we have around, I believe, 1 hour. I'll try to make it 45 minutes or so that it'll be open to answering further questions at the end. So today we are talking about how to establish and build strong organization. And this is I believe, our third session with me, with Stratnavigo Consulting PLT. And we are utilizing a platform called Growth Wheel, where in Growth Wheel, it's all about making decision and taking action. So if you missed our other 2 sessions, please go ahead and check it out at FB. Magic Online Academy. I believe the resources are there, still available for you to have a look. And I have shared in my first session a bit of detail what is Growth Wheel and how it can actually help you in making your strategies actionable by making sure that you make decisions and take action. So today we'll be talking about how to establish and build strong organization. And in this particular session, we are looking at 5 other focus areas in this particular challenge that most entrepreneurs face, irrespective of whether you're a startup or you are a growing company in all industries. So one of it is ownership and board, where we would like to call it leadership, the challenge in leadership of your organization. And of course, definitely, if you are the founder or the managing or the top management of your enterprise, this is talking about you. So you need to be really frank and honest about your leadership in the organization. Then we talked about, we're going to touch a bit on employee, because especially employees, when you have employees, when you're growing or you're starting up, how do you find your first employee? That's a startup challenge. And what about retaining your employees? What decisions or things that you need to look at? We will also be talking a bit on partnership. How do you develop and retain what we call critical success partnership? Making sure that your partnership is a strategic one. In the poll just now, most of you, majority was talking about your biggest challenge is business processes. How do you develop business processes that shows how your business create value? So we do have a decision sheet that I will look into that. And I also have shared at least 3 decision sheets, which we are discussing today with Team Magic. And inshallah, if you're registered with the Zoom, with the webinar, you will get that with your participation in this program. And finally is the legal issues, apparently, which sounds very good. Nobody so far answered in the poll that they were having challenges in legal issues. So that's great to hear. I hope everybody is making sure that they do the necessary in your registration of your business, also taking care of your annual returns and things like that. Right, great. So just to showcase what we are talking about, it will be this session. It's the third session. We haven't touched yet customer relations or operations. So I look forward in being with you for another couple of more webinars to share on the other customer relations and operations. So take the opportunity to register early, so you will get the goodies of decision sheets when you register. Okay, so we are going to look at, how do you review your current structure of your organization? What are the opportunities of hiring new staff? And, understanding the cost. What are the costs actually in acquiring staff? Then we're looking at ongoing training and developing employees. How do you determine that? And finally, of course, definitely, you need to have an action plan of recruiting and managing your staff, right? So again, I like to go back to a couple of slides where we did this in the first and the second session, where it's really important for you to understand when you are doing, when you're doing something like this, when you're doing, sorry, my phone is not off. When you're doing this, something like this, you really need to understand where you are in the company life cycle. Are you a startup, pre-startup, startup, growth, maturing? Because the challenges and the focus area would slightly differ. Okay, it will slightly differ. It will be, you would still have the same challenges, but the focus will be slightly different. Okay, and how do you understand what your focus area should be? We shared in the last two sessions, we talked about your 360 screening, where we discussed about looking at your as-is situation. So if you haven't received this from Magic, please do get registered with Magic to get this document. It's available with them. And what you do is actually do the number one, assess your status, where you give yourself a rating from 0 to 100. Where are you in that particular focus area? Okay, so look back at the videos we shared before in how to do it. And again, feel free to contact Magic to get back to me if you have any questions on this, because this would help you understand what is your focus area that you will look at for the next a month to 3 months. Okay, and definitely, as I mentioned in the previous session, it is closely related to business model canvas. For those who actually has done your business model canvas, might be wondering, how does this decision sheets or this action plan that you want to take relates to business model canvas? So when we're talking about organization, we're pretty much looking at the back of the scene of your business model canvas. So you're looking at your key partners, you're looking at your key activities, you're looking at your key resources, and you're also looking at the cost of delivering all the front end, the value that you are creating for your customer. Okay, so when you're looking at organization, it is the back end of your business model. So it is critical, because if you don't look at it, you might not be able to deliver effectively the value that you want to create for your customer. Okay, so don't underestimate the importance of building a strong organization. Okay, so it's something that you look out for when you're starting off, and it's something that you would want to maintain when you are, growth stage. You want to have that traction of sustaining your organization to be stable, to be the foundation to your business. So again, I like to share here, if you're looking at from the comparison, we are looking at the 5 elements, which is your leadership, ownership, and board. We're looking at your employees. How do you identify, retain your employees, and the cost involved, and also things that you need to discuss with your partners. Okay, because partnership is just like marriage. When you get married, you have this engagement period. You also, when you're talking about a relationship as in marriage, there's divorce. So those are the things that actually we need to have clarity in our day-to-day, in our, how do we deal with our organization? Because those elements would impact the outcome of our organization. Clarity of where we want to go. Are we doing it together? Do we have the same mission and vision? So it also relates to some extent the top part when we're talking about business concepts. So that's why in this series, I did talk a bit on business concept, because business concept is the fundamental that would help you answer the rest of your challenges. Okay, so I have from experience spoken to entrepreneurs or worked with entrepreneurs where their focus areas are these, organization. And there are times when in actual fact, I have to revert back to their business concept because they do not have clarity in their business concept that creates further challenges in the organization. Okay, for example, the reason why you are in business. What's the idea? What's the story behind your business? If you do not have clarity in that, how can you communicate it well with the talent that you want to recruit, with the partners that you want to work with, if you do not have your concept, clear? So sometimes there are some situations where the entrepreneur says, my problem or my challenge is employees. So when we have a conversation, we realize that the clarity of where the organization wants to go is not there. So because of that, we might revert back and we go back to the business idea, the mission and vision, the core value of the organization to help them answer the area of employees. Okay, so that's an example. So it doesn't work in silo. That's why in Growth Wheel, when you look at the tools, it's in a circle. And it is a checklist that helps you make decisions and take action. Right. So feel free to ask questions. Sorry that I'm using a tissue to wipe my face because the aircon is not working. So I have to, maintain my looks. Right. Okay. So let's move on to the first focus area, which is ownership and board. Okay, so in this, in Growth Wheel, when we talk about ownership and board, we are actually looking at strengthening the organization on the top level, including ownership distribution, selection of board members, making a social contract between owners and managers, and looking at the pros and cons of your exit, okay? Or whatever exit mechanism that you choose. There's some organization who decides that the exit mechanism is to go public. There could be some organization who says, I would want to sell my stake once I've achieved a certain traction. Or succession planning. Succession planning also is part of your exit mechanism because you won't be as a founder there in perpetuity. You'll be handing over the control and ownership of the business to somebody else. So it's considered as an exit mechanism. So when you're talking about ownership and board, one of the things that we really like to look at is what is the strength that everybody brings in the leadership position. So having clarity in that is very important. So one decision sheet that I like to share with you today that will help you along that is what we call partners' social contract, okay? Clarifying expectation and making agreements to avoid conflicts, okay? Because conflicts in any business always happens when there is a challenge, monetary challenge, when suddenly the crunch, things are not going so well, you challenge, you would have conflicts then. And also when things are going too well. So you will have a scenario when things are going so bad or when things are going too well, you would have conflicts. So in order to help in ensuring that conflict management is kept to a minimum, what is important that we always recommend is that to have a partner social contract. So this particular decision sheet helps you to understand each partner's position, partner in the board or shareholders. That's what we mean by partner social contract, in the sense that what are their roles in the development of the organization, what is in it for them, okay? And what do they give in return for what is in it for them? So this checklist pretty much shares quite in detail the possibility of whatever, what is important to you in comparison to the partner that you're working with. Okay. So it is like a prenup agreement, or you're talking about a relationship, and getting to know each other better. What's important? What's the red line? So this conversation will actually talk about what's important to them. Is the future direction of the organization important to that particular shareholder or particular member? Okay. Is money one of the main goals? For example, here we have in the checklist, you're talking about revenue, profit. Is revenue and profit important for you, important for your partner? So it is good to actually highlight it, have this discussion upfront to avoid future conflict. Conflict would happen, but you would be able to resolve it upfront. You will know, okay, we have agreed if the situation arose, these are the steps that we would take. Okay, so it is what we call a pre-mortem. We don't wait until somebody dies to check what's wrong with the relationship, but we try to aspire to see what could go wrong and how do we make sure that we resolve it amicably. Okay, so working relationship, because different people would have different ways of, different ways that they like to communicate. Probably some prefer face-to-face. Some people would prefer, just a phone call would be sufficient. Or, nowadays with WhatsApp and whatnot, would it be sufficient? So those things are quite important, right? So what in Growth Wheel with this particular decision, they have actually, it's not exhaustive. You could actually add more things that comes to mind, but this is from the experience of the consultant, the trainers, the business advisors, and entrepreneurs. Is pretty exhaustive for discussion purposes, okay? Again, there's no wrong or right. What is important for one person could be less important to the other person. But what is critical here, that we know where they're coming from, so that when we are negotiating for a certain resolution, it will be easier because there's clarity, okay? Right. So, so it's good to have this discussion with this decision sheet with each partner that you have, so that it will help, as I mentioned, in any requirement to resolve conflict. Okay. So again, feel free to ask any questions, and I have shared this decision sheet with Magic Team to be shared with you who are with us today. Okay. Right. If there's no question, I'm just going to move along to the next focus area, which is quite critical to some of you, which is employees. Okay, so what about employees? So this focus, yeah, sure. Rosalie?
No questions.
Okay, all right, awesome. So I'm just going to breeze along. All right, so the next focus area, which is quite critical, I believe, especially for startups. How do you recruit your first employee? How do you recruit your first employee? That is always the most critical and most, challenge for some people, challenging. How do you find the right person to be your first employee? Employee 001. Okay. So this focus area helps you in recruiting and managing staff, including writing job descriptions, doing employee, helping you in facilitating employee training, calculating staff costs and benefit, and defining organizational chart and describing future employee profiles. So in this particular focus areas, there's quite a few decision sheets, but I can't, showcase everything today because of time factor. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you the process. There's a framework of how do you recruit your employee. Again, whether it's your first employee in the startup or it's employee number 1,000 in your organization. So normally before recruitment, there's 4 things you would look at. The budget. Do you have the budget? Okay. If you're a startup, I'll be also sharing with you how do you calculate the cost benefit. It's also important for you to have a clear job description, because don't, and I've seen this so many times. I've even experienced it. Coming into an organization and the boss tells me, please write your own job description. I love to see it. Write in the chat box. How many of you have gone through that? When say like, oh, you come into the organization, oh, you just write your job description. What do you think you should be doing? After I share with you, you tell me, does this suit you? Okay, do share the chat box. Do you have that experience? I have that multiple times. So job description, you have to be clear about what do you want them to do. Okay, what do you want them to do? Because then it's easy for you to match or find the right person to fit that particular job. Okay, so then you would have the employee profile, meaning what sort of person that you think would suit that particular job description that you have. So definitely, even if you hire a recruitment consultant, you as the founder, you as the top management, you need to know what is the job description. What do you want them to do? Okay. And then the advertisement, what's the process? Then you talk about during recruitment, job interview, personality test, evaluation, and contract negotiation. So this is during recruitment, also critical. Okay. And finally, after recruitment, task assignment, starter introduction, training program, and employee review meeting. So these are the 12 steps when you're recruiting a new staff, recruiting and maintaining staff. Okay, right. Right. Oh, you love it. Write down the expected salary as I want. Definitely. Then they say it's too high. Your job doesn't match. Thank you, Dua, for the. Was this the same Dua last week? We shall find out. Okay, right. So these are the 12 steps. And then what do we need to also look at? Okay, when you're talking about the job description, because I really like, because you only recruit people when you need them. Remember, especially for startups, you're not recruiting just because you need a warm body. Okay, because the honeymoon ends when the employee starts not to fulfill expectation. That's when the honeymoon stops. That honeymoon ends. So to ensure that the honeymoon continues, as founder, as management, you have to really be clear about what is your expectation of what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, things that can be delegated to them to do, things that and how do they add value to the organization. Okay, so it must be clear, how do they create value for the company? Because if they don't add value, then the question will be, it will be a cost center, right? So upfront, management has to be clear, how do they create value and how do they play their roles in the organization? So you have to develop a sort of organizational chart. So I'm not going to go deep into organizational chart because there are multiple, what do you call it, mahzab or ways of doing organizational chart, but you need to find what works for you. And you need to identify how this employee creates value for your company. And I would share a bit on that when we talk about business processes, because business processes and employee responsibility has a relationship in that. Okay, right. Right. So next, what I like to share here is the decision sheet. This, I think you guys would love it. How do you calculate staff cost and benefit? Because normally we'll look at, some of you will look at, salary, SOXO, KWSP, but in here, in this particular decision sheet, it does share a complete list of costs. What are the costs that involves in recruiting a new employee? Okay, what will be the cost that the company needs to bear? Okay, and here you also have a benefit. You remember I was talking about value creation. So you also are able to identify what are the benefits and the value creation, value created by recruiting this particular employee. Okay, it doesn't have to be all, doesn't have to be an employee that does everything. It would be wonderful if you can get somebody like that, but let's talk about being realistic. It doesn't mean it has to do everything, but you must be able to some extent measure the value created by that particular employee. And again, there's this comprehensive list that you select which one is related to that particular position or that particular employee. Okay. Why is this important? So this is important to see whether cost versus benefit, whether the benefit outweighs the cost. Okay. If the benefit outweighs the cost, then definitely you would take that employee, or that, you know, you will create that position. But if the cost is more than the benefit and the value creation, then you have to think about how that position can create more value, right? Okay, so this helps you in understanding, giving you an overview of creating the job description, ensuring that that employee that you take is creating value for the organization for the cost that you are incurring. All right. So you don't just recruit somebody for the sake of, oh, I need somebody to do something, and leave it at that. So I'd like to share what do you call it? A book by called Entrepreneurship Myth. And it shares about an entrepreneur who has a bakery. And because she was so tired, burnt out, she decided to recruit somebody to help her in her bakery. And what happened was that she just chose somebody with a good attitude and started to, you know, not giving a job description. What she did was that you do everything that what I'm doing, just help me. So what happened was that the outcome was not good, because at the end of the day, the employee also got burnt out because she was doing everything without having clarity what her role, what she should be doing, and the sharing of the roles and responsibility with the founder. So in the end, she quit, and then the business, you know, went down. So that's one of the things that we really need to have clarity. What's the value creation by the employee that we're recruiting, and what would it cost us? Okay, right. So feel free. Any questions? I feel lonely when there's people not asking questions. Otherwise, I will just rumble along.
Still no question. I
Okay,
think
great.
we are very focused here again. That's
Yes, I like to think so. Okay, so we already talked about leadership. We talked about employee. So when we're talking about leadership, the thing that I shared is that for you to have like a partnership discussion on what's in it for them. And then also you're talking about what do they bring to the table for the organization, and the need perhaps to add more strength on leadership. For example, you probably would need somebody who's strong in marketing when your business requires it. So maybe you would want to acquire a board member who has that expertise. It's the same thing that goes with employees. You would look, like I mentioned just now, value creation. How do you do that? You can actually use something like the job description decision sheet, where it describes there what is the value created by the employee and also what's the cost to them. So you can use that as a template for your discussion with your team and also with your business advisor. So
Safra, we have one question though.
Okay.
On FB. From Kedrish is asking, how do you quantify value creation?
Okay, so how do you quantify value creation? In business, normally there's 3 ways, okay? One is that you make things faster, okay? So meaning if within 1 hour you can, originally you can only make three product, but now with this new stuff, you can make 5 or 10, okay? So that's value creation, meaning the person comes in, it allows you to be more productive. Second is that it allows you to bring in, you make the process better. You also create value from the money. For example, sales. With this person coming in, and they are able to drive sales to another level. So they increase revenue, okay? And the third one is they decrease cost, okay? With this particular employee, it helps to decrease, it makes the process better, faster and cheaper. So those are the three ways to measure value. So value is not just money coming in, it could be money saved, either from productivity or from ability to decrease cost. So if I can just share again the slide before, you can see there. For example, here you're talking about clientele increase, assisting ability to assist, being able to do delivery, so the cost of delivery will come down. Or you're talking about product development, they're able to design product without increasing, for example, you don't want to outsource, you want to have somebody in-house, and because they're in-house, they're able to create a certain amount of increase in productivity or revenue. Okay, I hope that Kadri do say that.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
also Sharifah Zuraida here in Zoom. She's asking,
Okay.
when do we calculate this employee cost benefit? Like after a few months of employment?
No, in actual fact, before you recruit.
Okay.
When you want to create that position, the decision to create that position, you should already make that you should have already decided what will be the value creation and compared to the cost. The best time is before you recruit.
So this will be like the metric for this employee?
Yeah, it will be the metric for that employee.
Okay.
So it can be, okay, so if you are haven't recruited yet, you want to create the job, to me, when you want to create your first recruitment, or you want to create the job, this is a good metric to have. So that it will help you in this decision whether it's worthwhile for you to create that position or not. Okay.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Having said that, when you have, if you're currently already in business, and this is a good measure also to see whether the employee that you are employing is actually creating value or is a cost to you. So it's a good basis for companies which is already in business to look at, what's the need to restructure, what's the need to relook at job description, is then when you look at the value creation compared to the cost of retaining the staff. Okay, so when we talk, for example, like last time, say 10, 15 years ago, especially in government service, you would have somebody specifically typing letters, right? Specifically typing letters, because we don't have the technology for everybody to type letters. You don't have the skill or to use a typewriter, for example, right? But nowadays, somebody who focuses only in typing letters, there'll be, I believe the cost of them being employed is higher compared to the value that they create. So it is also a good way to actually relook at our organization to actually see which job is actually creating value and which job could be designed better so that they would create value. All right. So it is a good decision sheet not only when you're starting off, but also when you're looking at reorganizing your organization you're in. I hope that that's, yeah.
And we can add in the left column on the sheet, we can add our own metric.
Definitely. So this is just a checklist that has been developed, but it's not exhaustive. So there could be other things. For example, if you look here, maybe you're talking about social enterprise. So maybe they're talking about community-based network. You probably, the value that you created by having this position, that they will help in the networking with the community. So that's a value creation, right? So it's not exhaustive. You can see there's boxes there you can add. So yeah, thank you, Rosalie. That's a good thing that you pointed out. All right. And so Sharit, I hope that, so I know Sharifah Zuraida, so I hope that answers your question. Okay, right. So we're going to partnership. So when we're talking about partnership, is slightly different than the leaders. So the leaders or the management and the owners is a internal partnership. Whereas this partnership, we're talking about business partnership external from the business. We're talking about suppliers. We're talking about partners deciding what alliances that we want. Maybe we want to have an agency agreement with a network. So this is where basically what we want to look at is the terms and condition that we enter with them. We enter with the relationship that we have with them. So like it or not, with any partnership, just like ownership and board, or even employee, the clarity of what's the term and condition we have with a relationship with them, okay? So one decision sheet that I shared here is a template for a memorandum of understanding, okay? A memorandum of understanding definitely is not a binding document, but it is a document that helps you in clarifying your relationship with your partners, okay? So we're talking about what is in an MOU, okay? You're talking about the background. Why do you want to have that agreement? What's the purpose of the partnership? And then you talk about the scope. What's my role? What's your role? Okay, and what's the outcome that we want? Definitely you want to have clarity in the outcome of the relationship, okay? And what are the rights? What's my right as the partner, and what's your right as the other party, okay? What's the obligation? What's any investment? And what's resources made available and termination? So this could be initially start off as an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that could later on convert into a partnership agreement, okay? But we always recommend for you to start exploring with an MOU. And once the MOU is something that you are happy, both parties are happy, then you can actually work out it to be a full partnership agreement. So you can look here on top, there's a checklist, elements that you would like to include in the MOU. For example, intellectual property rights. And it could be, you know, if you want to talk about a JV, potential JV, what will be the management structure, who, organization and staff, who would be doing what? Is there revenue sharing involved? Is there any reporting requirement? Particular business processes, for example, reporting and things like that, and timeline, meaning how long the partnership will be, you know, duration of it, whether there's a particular timeline, whether there's a milestone. So this draft MOU pretty much is just as a beginning that could later on be converted into a full-fledged binding partnership agreement. Okay, so why this is good, I believe, because a lot of situations, entrepreneurs are not clear what are the things that you require to have in a partnership agreement, okay, with your supplier, with an alliance, or with external stakeholders. Okay, so this would actually help you in you know, coming up with what are the terms and conditions you would want in your partnership agreement or even your memorandum of understanding. Okay, so this one also I've made available for you who have registered into this webinar. Okay, right. So next, I think the biggest challenge, as mentioned in the poll, was business processes. Okay, this focus area actually deals with mapping your business processes, defining your business procedures in and also outsourcing business processes. Okay, designing your workflow, planning your delegation and collaborative work, and creating culture that improves productivity. So I always believe, especially when you talk about business processes, it's closely related to employee recruitment, because it works hand in hand. You know, when you are recruiting new people, it's good to have business processes in place so that delegation, clarity in how things are going to operate and work is clear. Okay, it's there, so that people don't you know, do things ad hoc. And definitely some people would say, oh, this is the most difficult part to do. It is actually not rocket science. I believe the only thing you need to do is actually to sit down and do it. Okay. I think as I mentioned, Sharifah Zuraida, she's an ISO consultant. She knows what I'm talking about. She's one of the persons who has expertise in this. So it's just basically sitting down and mapping out your business processes. So with this, I share with you a value chain decision sheet. So this value chain decision sheet actually helps you map out the important business processes of the company. Okay, so you don't use this decision sheet only one. You can use it for multiple business processes. If you notice here on top, you can check. You can use a decision sheet for perhaps product development per se, specifically for purchases and supplies, recruitment and whatnot. So you can use this decision sheet for multiple business processes. Okay. So what you need to do is actually to map out. So sit down and write how actually you're doing your processes at the moment, if you already have processes. But if you don't, what are the processes that you would like to have in place? Okay. And remember that the business processes is not to make things difficult. The business processes are developed so that it's easier for you to be able to get somebody else to do the job when you're not around. Okay. It's also so that, if you're not around, somebody will know, okay, when I have to do procurement, these are the steps that I need to take. Okay. So you can delegate the job to the employee to do that. Okay. So this is where I think the biggest challenge is when startup trying to develop their business processes. So my recommendation is always start with how you are doing it at this point of time. Just start off with just mapping it out. Just map it out first, because your business processes would change with the number of people you have, with the number, the size of your organization. So it is not going to be static. It's not going to be, once you have that business process, it's going to be stay on forever like that. It's not. You really need to look at whether people are following the business processes or not. If the people are not following the business processes, either the person needs training or the business process requires improvement. So having it documented, mapping it out like this would help you in order to address your business processes challenge. Okay. So this is a decision sheet that I share with Magic, and inshallah you will get a copy of it if you register for this webinar. Okay. So again, you have the main company business processes, you have the sub processes, and you have the supporting processes. So sit down with your team, map it out, so that you will be able to use it as the template for your documentation. And inshallah later can even be used if you plan to apply for ISO. Okay, right. Any questions? Okay, Rosaline, everybody's happy?
Hang on. Nothing so far. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So let me just get a sip of water.
Okay, sure.
All right. So having this, meaning what's the decision you need to do here? The decision is that you need to start saying, okay, which business processes you want to document. That's a decision you have to make. And the second, what are the actions that you need to take? The actions you need to take is that you need to map it out. Okay, so once you map it out, then how are you going to document it? Okay, so that's the second thing you have to decide and the action you need to take. And then the third part is that how would you communicate it with your employees, with your team? Okay, so these are the actionable parts of your strategy. So the strategy of documenting your business processes, because if you do not document your business processes, it will be a challenge for you to grow. Okay, because everything is in here. If boss is not around, nothing moves, because only boss knows how to do stuff. Okay, so as a startup, to me, as a founder, it's good for you to actually start, simply documenting how do you do things, so that you know how to what went wrong. You could reflect, you can see how you could improve the processes even better. All right, so I hope this helped. An example how to fill it would be fill it in would be appreciated. Okay, definitely one way. Okay, for example, let me look at here, and I'm just gonna again, there's pro and con giving examples. The pro is that you get a better idea. The con, my example will be very individual. Okay, so the good part is to explore, to do it, and then you can share with me and I can give you feedback, right? So for example, product development. So what is the process of product development? Say we take the first part here, business processes, product development, and I have a bakery business. So my product development would be how to create the next best, what do you call it, a cake design or cake menu. So maybe my first business process would be, I would put out a survey with my customers and do a sampling, saying like, what would be the incoming flavors that you would like. So maybe that's my first business process. My first business process is that to go out and ask my client what sort of flavor mix or flavor menu that they would like in their developing a new cake. Then I would do probably my second step in the business process is to create a recipe. Okay, and then the third one is that I would create and design the cake. And then my third, I would do something like, I would do sampling. I would do a pre-launch party. I would get the clients who gave feedback and give them a taste of the menu. And finally, I would put it up as part of production, okay? And I would actually put up in the menu. So that's the main business process of introducing a new cake menu in my bakery. So that's product development. Then what will be the sub process? So then I will put in details for me to actually do a survey to find out from my current customer what flavors that they would like. Okay, what are the steps that I need to do? So you would list it out. Okay, so I hope that helps, Chen. So you would have the main process, and then you would have what are the sub process for that particular step that you do. Okay, so yes, it does require you a bit of sitting down, thinking it out. But once you do it, the rest is just pretty much improving on something that you've written out. So I hope, Chen, that answers your example.
Yeah, there are actually two persons asking the same questions.
Okay.
Chen and Beryl. Yeah, and then another one is from Sharifah Zuraida. Are resources also documented on the process value chain?
Definitely. So you can add, as I said, you can add, sorry, let me, what are the things that you require in the processes? Because you said, for example, you said, in the sub process, what are the resources that you require? So as I said, this is just a template that you can refine further. But having this template would help you know what things further that you require for that particular process. So once you start mapping it out, okay, then you will realize, okay, what decisions that you have to make in order to make sure that process runs smoothly. Probably need resources, you probably need people. Okay, when you're talking about resources, it's about material, man, and money, right? The 3 M's. Okay, machine is number 4, the 3 M's. So when you do this, it would further go into detail. So that's where you have the supporting process, the man, the machine, the money, and the material that you need. Okay, definitely. So our resources document, definitely. Sharifah Zuraida, definitely. Okay, right. So I hope that answers it. So this is just a template for us to start thinking about our processes, start us to document it, start us to say, okay, what are the decisions that I need to make in order to make sure that I'm creating value. Okay, I'm creating value and I'm creating and I'm capturing value. You're doing something which is creating and capturing value. And as mentioned by Sharifah just now, Sharif, what resources do I require? Okay, right? Hope it helps. Because otherwise, if you don't document it, as I mentioned, business processes requires documentation. You will just follow by the seat of your pants. Okay, all right. Thank you for the great questions. Really love the questions. Okay, right. So I'm just going to move to the last one, which a lot of people seems to not have any challenges in, which I'm happy, which is the legal issues. So legal issues pretty much focuses on your legal documents, on your legal structure of the company. You're talking about renegotiating contracts, perhaps contracts with your partners, contracts with any other stakeholders, ensuring corporate compliance with laws and regulation, as well as companies' intellectual property. So, there's a lot of hoo-ha about intellectual property. There's some people who are for registering your intellectual property. There's some people who says, the cost is more than the benefit. So those are the things that you have to decide whether you would want to, whether it's important for you, for your organization to protect your intellectual property, okay? Because we wouldn't want you to regret decisions that you didn't make much earlier when you could have done it much earlier, right? So here we have a contract negotiation checklist, okay, where you can actually explore possibilities to renegotiate contract terms, which I think is really super awesome, considering that we are undergoing nearly 2 years of effect of pandemic. That I believe that we have the need in a crisis management mode to relook at our contract terms. So it's good to have this list of potential parties of a contract and look at what are the things that perhaps we need to renegotiate in order to facilitate our survival of our business. Okay, so this is just a checklist to see what are the agreements that we have and what are the ideal terms. So looking back at the document, what would be better for you? Okay, now that even banks are giving mora, but you have to individually apply for it. So what sort of mora that you would want from the bank? You have to know what is ideal for you so that you can negotiate. So a lot of people don't realize when you're talking about negotiation, you're pretty much looking at what do you want and what can you give in return. So it's the same thing. You need to know where you are, what do you want to get out of the relationship, and what can you give in return. So in some senses, having this checklist helps you be able to clarify what are the things that you need to do, what decisions you need to take, and what actions you need to make, especially when you are in situations like what we're facing now in the midst of pandemic. Okay, so this checklist also, you're talking about even employees, you're talking about your suppliers, you're talking about your lawyers, accountant, and things like that. I do know some companies who are facing problems because of their getting their audited accounts out, partly because of challenges in paying for the accounting fee. So don't run away from them, because those are services which are important to you. So it's good to, it's painful, but it's good to actually face it and try to resolve it positively. Okay. So with that, those are the 5 focus areas, and I've shared with you decision sheets for at least one decision sheet for each area. And feel free to ask me any questions. As I mentioned, when you look at the business model canvas, what we're looking at is at the back end of your business model. We're looking at your key partners, the activities, resources, and cost structure. And we do have a question here from FB, Farida Hanim. When's the right time for you to register trademark? Okay, when you want to register trademark, as soon as you can. As soon as, especially if you, to me, registering your brand or your trademark, to me, as soon as you have it, because they look at the date of your registration. So as soon as you can. That's my suggestion, especially if your brand or whatever IP you have is attractive. Okay, it's catchy, it's attractive. Do it as soon as possible before somebody copies it, because they will look at the date of your registration. One good way to understand more is actually you can go to my IPO. They will be able to give you advice on how to do it. And it's not actually very expensive if you talk about your brand registration. My suggestion to you, okay, I know some people, they put their brand and they put TM at the end, okay, supposedly trademark. From my experience, because I do know a colleague, one of my colleagues, and he used to work with my IPO, he shares with me, he says TM means tak ada makna, no meaning. TM tak ada makna. Yang ada, what has meaning is R. So if you're registered, if you put it's considered as, you register with whatever body, and you can use the R is considered registered. But if you put TM, tak ada makna. There's no meaning.
Yeah, I mean, Dual said it has a meaning. It means Telecom Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do understand, just reach out to my IPO, reach out to them directly. Actually, you don't really need to use, sorry lah. Well, I should refrain saying that you don't need a consultant on that, but you can actually go directly to them and ask. But if it's too technical for you, then feel free to talk to somebody who has expertise in doing the registration. But there is actually ways for you to do it very easily and simply through my IPO itself. Okay. The challenging part, if you have technical IPs or you have something which is very technical, then you probably would require somebody, or you're trying to contest, meaning your brand or your trademark is already been registered with somebody else, then you probably need somebody to help you with that. But if your one is very straightforward, where nobody has done it before, it's quite straightforward. And they do have some programs to help, especially, certain age group, usahawan muda, the young, the youth entrepreneurs. They do have packages for those who want to trademark their, they want to register their trademark. I hope that answers the question, Farida Hanif. If it does, just indicate in FB. Yeah, Dual said Telecom Malaysia. Yeah, definitely.
There's another one from Farida on Facebook. What's the estimate cost?
Estimate, I don't remember. I don't have the chart with me. But it shouldn't be a lot of money. As I said, if it's just registering your brand, because the cost is actually involved in searching, for the agency to search on whether there's somebody else who already has it. Okay. So the cost itself, unfortunately, I'm not the expert. I can ask. You can go direct to my IPO and ask for it. I believe they have it in the website. So I believe it's not that expensive. Dia tak adalah ribu raban. Okay, it's not thousands of ringgit. I don't believe it is. Unless, as I said, unless it's technical, then it could, and unless you want to cover multiple countries, then it would be more expensive. Okay, I hope that helps. Right. Any other questions? Okay, so with that, I also shared a 30, 60, 90 decision sheet. I shared this before in the sessions before, but yeah, please feel free to use this. When you're doing the decision sheets, you always would have, hey, thoughts that you have while you are doing it. Immediately jot it down. Don't think, oh, it's okay, I'm going to write it down later, and you'll forget. So my suggestion is that always when you are thinking about doing your decision sheets and there's thoughts that you said, oh, I need to decide, just write it down, or you get somebody to write it for you, if or you record it. There's so many technology available out there to, dictate. So, I need to make sure to find out more. Like just now, I need to find out more. How long? So how long, again, depends on, I don't think it's really long. Again, I wouldn't, sorry, Farida, I'm not the expert. I just know there's a process. But how long or what's the cost is good. It's best that you go direct to my IPO.
Okay. In that sense, if I may interject there,
Yep.
we have had actually ran few, I think about 4, 5, 6 webinars on IP with CAS, who are
Yeah.
the experts in the area of IP and trademarks.
Mhm.
So if you can go back to a group on Facebook under Magic Online Academy,
Yeah.
you will try to look for the replays of these webinars.
Yeah.
We have different ones focusing on trademarks and
Yeah.
patents and
Yeah.
IPs and
Yeah.
all this. And in there are details of
Yeah.
how to
Awesome.
do these things, like how much they are, how long they would take,
Yeah.
and how if you want to register overseas.
Yep.
So you don't do it many times, or you can
Yeah.
have do once and you do it in many
Yeah.
countries at the same time.
Just cost a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they
Yeah.
call it the Madrid Protocol, which was
Yeah. Yeah.
using.
Yeah. So when you register in one country, if it's recognized under the protocol, in actual fact, it should be automatic in other
Yes,
countries.
yes, and you don't have to do it many times. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that for those countries who are not in the Madrid protocol, which quite a few of them are not,
yeah.
quite a few of the developed. Yeah, so yeah, awesome. That'll be great. Go and look out in Magic Online Academy FB Live.
You just look for that poster of the
Yeah,
webinar and the link should be underneath it.
yeah, sure. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. As I said, if it's trademark, for example, the name of your brand normally is short, is quite quick and short. But if it's patent or it's IP, involves a lot of content, then they have a longer process for that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Farida, I hope that helps. I did not manage to give you the answer, but as Rosaline has helped out, there is a webinar series on that. So, go and look it out. So as I mentioned, so it's all about making decisions and taking action. So I hope, again, that today has been helpful for you. Reach out to Magic, register for our future sessions. There will be, I believe, 2 more coming, right? And we would, again, as I said, as much as possible, I'll share at least 3 decision sheets which are important for that particular challenge. And so feel free to reach out to Magic, and thank you everybody. Assalamualaikum.